So I actually want to start, you guys think I'm a little bit crazy, but I want to start with something that I personally call the most important sentence in the world. And I'm going to do this whole thing where I'm going to build up this sentence, and you guys are going to be like, oh yeah, that's nice, just show us. And then I'm going to show you, and you guys are going to be like, yeah, okay. But as we go along through the seminar, I mean, this thing it's kind of the theme of the seminar. And as we go along, when you first see it, you're going to be like, oh, that's cool, that's nice. But as we go along today and tomorrow, it's going to start making sense on deeper and deeper levels. You're going to start connecting the dots in deeper and deeper ways. So the most important sentence in your life is you don't have to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. And that's worth writing down. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. And I know a lot of people see that and they're like, oh, well, I'm not proving anything. Like, no. Stop trying to prove that you're not proving anything. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to prove anything with women. You don't have to prove to anybody how cool you are, how sexy you are, how much of a ladies' man you are, how funny you are, how successful you are. You don't have to do that. And particularly in our culture, you know, it's been interesting dating and living in these different cultures, because one thing that stands out about our culture in particular, when I work with men from Western culture, is that Western culture puts such an emphasis on external achievement. We put so much emphasis on appearance. You have to appear to be a cool guy. You have to appear to be an attractive guy. Now the funny thing is that this is this concept of constantly proving yourself, appearing to be something successful. It makes sense. It's very useful in the materialistic world. It's great if you're trying to get a raise, if you're trying to make money, if you're trying to invent a new product. It's very useful. But as we're going to discover in personal relationships and emotional relationships, it backfires. And it actually sabotages us a lot. It leads to a lot of insecurity and a lot of feelings of inadequacy. So there you go. Most important phrase in the world. So we're going to start the first portion of the seminar. We're going to start with the science of attraction. And actually, I want to start with a quick written activity. So if you take out all your paper and pens, what I want you to do, I want you guys to take like 3 or 4 minutes. And if you're watching at home, do the same thing. Take 3 or 4 minutes, and I want you to write down everything you think women find attractive. Everything you can think. No matter how superficial, no matter how theoretical, write down every single thing you can think of that women find attractive. Just take a few minutes. All right, everybody got a list? So why don't you guys just start calling some things out to me. What do women find attractive?
Humor.
Humor.
Confidence.
Confidence.
Money.
Money.
Height.
Height.
Intelligence.
Intelligence.
Abs.
Abs. Nice.
Status.
Someone's read my book.
Fame.
Fame.
Sexual prowess.
There you go. Sex.
Money.
Got money.
Oh, money. Muscle.
Muscles. Put abs, muscles.
Oh, yeah, abs. Honesty.
Somebody else has read my book. Anything else?
Play guitar.
you go. Guitar.
Tattoos. Great hair. Oh yeah.
Good.
Hair and skin. Okay, we'll stop there. That's a good list. So does anybody see what, there's one concept that kind of underlies all these things. And actually, the concept that underlies everything is actually on the list. It's funny, in terms of what, if you dig into the actual psychological research of what women find attractive in men, or if you dig into the psychological research of kind of women's sexual attraction in general, it's a little bit of a mess. And it's really funny because the men who research it are like these kind of old geezers who have no idea what to look at or where to look. And the studies that they run keep coming up with just as many questions as they create. But there's one very famous study in particular. There's a guy named David Buss, and he did a massive cross-cultural survey of women all over the world. I think it was something like 120 different countries. It was over 100,000 women interviewed. It was everything from women in the US to women in Japan, India, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Amazon jungle, everywhere. And he interviewed them on what they found attractive. And there are cultures. There's like a culture in Malaysia where the most attractive man, it's like what they do is they take like sticks and like carve like totem poles into it, and the man who has the prettiest stick is like the most attractive man. There are cultures in Africa where like the guys kill lions and cattle with their bare hands or whatever, and it's the guy who's the best hunter is the most attractive guy. You come to the U.S. and there's all these stereotypes about the guy who has the nice car and the money and the nice house he's the most attractive one. And so basically the conclusion that Buss came to is he said that it's the one underlying thing under everything is the perception of social status. And depending on which culture you're in, that perception of social status changes. So if you took one of those guys from Malaysia who whittles like one of his pretty sticks and you put him here in LA, he's probably not going to attract many ladies. But at the same time, if you took a Hollywood actor and you put him in the middle of the jungle in Malaysia, he's not going to attract many ladies either. So there's the idea of social status, but it's relative. Humor, confidence, money, height, IQ, ambition, playing guitar. These things in and of themselves are not necessarily attractive. The reason they're attractive is because they imply this. Let me ask you, how many girls go for a guy who plays the harp? I haven't met any. But 500 years ago, girls would be going crazy for it. Why don't girls go crazy for a guy who plays the harp? Why do they go crazy for a guy who plays guitar? Because guitar is a high status. Rock music is popular. Rock stars are popular. Playing guitar and being good at guitar implies high status. It implies the possibility of high status. Now, this conclusion kind of sucks. Because, I don't know, if you're like me and you got like pushed around in high school, like the idea of having to be a high status guy all the time is a shitty idea. It doesn't sound very fun. It sounds like you have to spend the rest of your life trying to be as cool as possible. And the interesting thing is, though, is that's not necessarily the case. Let me give you an example. So when I first got into this stuff, like 8 years ago, I read up on it. I read up on attraction. I kind of figured this thing out. I'm like, all right, I got to be as cool as possible. So I learned, I started dressing like cool and crazy, and I started learning all these lines, and I started going out to nightclubs and basically trying to project myself to be the coolest guy possible. And I had an experience early on that really kind of blew my mind at the time. It took me years to figure out what was going on. I went to a club in Boston, and it was early in the night, and I walked up to a group of girls, and I started chatting with them. And back then I had my go-to opener line, and I had my go-to I had like 3 or 4 stories that I always pulled out and got laughs. And so I'm going through this whole thing with the girls, and the whole time they're just kind of sitting there like not impressed. And so finally, I didn't really know what to do, so I started making fun of one of the girls. And I reached out to touch her, and she's like, "Don't touch me." I'm like, okay. And she looked at me, and she's like, "You are the creepiest guy in here. None of these girls want to talk to you." It's like, okay, I think that's a rejection. Walk along. So I walk along, and a couple hours later, same club, same night, same type of women. I walk up to another group of girls, pull out the same lines, same stories, same jokes, and they're laughing and they're giggling and they're joking around with me. And one of them, after about 15, 20 minutes, one of them sitting in my lap, and she's like, "You're the hottest guy in here. Every girl here wants to be with you." And I'm like, that's not what I heard earlier. It just kind of, it screwed with my head because, I had always operated on this assumption that, women have their standards, and if you meet those standards, you can be with any girl you want. So how can women so similar in such a similar context have such polarized and opposite reactions to me? Doesn't make sense. And what you find, if you actually start digging into this stuff, is that the perception of status, it's not only contextual. Really obvious examples, you take Brad Pitt, put him in the Malaysian jungle, or you take a Malaysian tribesman, put him in the middle of LA. Those are obvious examples. It goes deeper than that. Our personal perceptions and our personal biases alter how we perceive other people. Let me give you an example. How many of you guys have ever been in a room and there's one woman there, and she's kind of, she's all right. But suddenly after an hour or two, she starts looking really, really hot. And you're like, man, I gotta be with her. And it's this, because she's the only one there, we develop a perceptual bias for us. I remember actually I was out in Thailand once with a friend, and we went to a bar one night, and the bar was there was 3 women for every guy. And of course, we went to the bar and got drinks, and we sat there, and it was every single girl we looked at, we're like, she's not hot enough, she's not hot enough, she's not hot enough. And then the next day we went on a boat tour, and somehow we ended up on a boat tour with 25 Japanese tourists who were 60 years old. And there was one girl our age. And next thing I know, we're fighting over her attention, trying to get her attention. I'm like, what are we doing? We were just in a bar last night with 60 hot girls, and now we're on a boat with one mediocre one, and we're fighting over it. So the perception of status doesn't just change within culture, it changes from moment to moment based on our personal perceptions and our personal biases. Now, how many people here have heard are familiar with the alpha-beta male idea, right? So there's this idea of there are alpha men and beta men. And alpha men are the most dominant men in the population. They're the leaders of the population. And the idea is that alpha males have sexual access to 90% of the women, and betas basically have to pick up the scraps or pick up what's left over. And the scientific reasoning behind it is based on monkeys. Because monkeys have hierarchies, particularly gorillas and baboons and stuff like that. I won't get too far into it. But the interesting thing is if, as time went on, they've studied chimpanzees and bonobos, who we're most related to, they find that what they found is that if one alpha becomes too alpha, the betas get together and kill them, basically. And what they found was that what most chimpanzees actually do is they keep their hierarchy ambiguous. Because if the alpha becomes too popular, the beta is overthrown. And so it's in the alpha's best interest to make it a little bit unclear whether he's alpha or beta or not. And then the betas, of course, want to make themselves appear more alpha. And so women don't actually know from moment to moment which one's actually the alpha or which one's the beta. And to me, this makes a lot more sense with human behavior. If you look at human societies or human social structures, there's not always an obvious person on top. I mean, with rare exceptions, there's not an obvious person on top. If you go to a party, or if you go to, a work party or a networking event, or even a conference or something like this, there's not a clear hierarchy at all times. It's ambiguous. And so the question remains, how do women, if women are attracted to status, and if they're always looking for these indicators, but if those indicators aren't always obvious, and her biases are always fucking with her perception, how can she ever have a reliable read on how attractive a guy is? This is getting really theoretical. I want to make sure everybody's following me. Does this make sense? Women need to find, there needs to be some sort of mechanism that women evolve that they can see through all this bullshit. Because it's easy to fake that you're smart. It's easy to fake that you have money. It's easy to fake confidence. It's even easy to fake humor. So how can women see how attractive a guy actually is? And my argument that I've made, and what I've found over the years working with men all over the world, is that I honestly believe that women subconsciously, consciously, women look to see how you feel about yourself. If you think about, and that's also worth writing down.